it's not really an exaggeration to say that if you win, most likely the Democrats will be in control of Congress.
Yeah. And look, a person can have a blog if he wants, but I think it's a sign that he'll be in politics again someday, whether he knows it yet or not.
And this is the problem with Donald Trump, is he wanders into situations that he has no understanding of the complexity of it, and then he doesn't know how to get out, and then he claims victory.
Hi everyone, welcome to the San Diego Politics Show. I'm your host, Matt Strabone. Thanks for tuning in. Today we've got Brandon Riker, a candidate for Congress in California's 48th District. He will be interviewed by my co-host Andrew Keatts, who is also the editor of the Times of San Diego, and a man whose head does not resemble any food item in particular. Then Andy and I will finish things off with this month's local political power rankings. Enjoy the show.
And we're back, and joining us for our interview this week is a candidate in the California Congressional District 48. That is Brandon Riker. Brandon, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming down. Long trip in this big district that's been intentionally gerrymandered, so that means a lot of ground to cover, huh?
A lot of ground to cover, but as I've said since Prop 50 happened, it just means more miles on the car, but the campaign itself stays pretty much the same.
Yeah. Well, so, we're here in San Diego. This district now includes folks that we have not necessarily been voting alongside, or areas with representatives that we may not be as familiar with. We've got a San Diego City Council person running, somebody who's run in this area 3 times. To a lot of people here in San Diego, you are the person who's not from here. I find that in a lot of the news coverage, you get your sort of one-word descriptor is either entrepreneur or investor.
Yeah.
Now, your business, you work in your family's financial planning firm, right?
Used to, yeah. So we sold that business. So now I have my own small business, but the one that we lead with is trained economist, and my ballot designation will be small business owner. But we spend a lot of time talking about the fact I would be the only trained economist in Congress if elected, and if we're going to have one, why not one who lives in the California 48th?
Okay, so I want to talk about your perspective as an economist. But before we do, tell us about your small business.
Yeah, so it's an investment firm that I have up in Palm Springs. It does mostly family and friends money.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as an economist, then we are in a tumultuous time.
We are.
I could pick a bunch of different topics that I might want to throw to you, but let's start with gas prices.
Yeah.
Global market. By most accounts, the disruption, despite the ceasefire that was agreed to as we sit here a couple days ago, is nonetheless going to be disruptive for months or potentially years, according to some accounts. How do we expect this to materialize in people's own financial decisions when they fill up the gas tank over the next few months?
Well, it's going to continue to be what is a long-term trend of people having to make really hard decisions. And so this, gas prices are the issue now, but this goes back to when Trump started with the tariffs. We've seen an increase in prices for basic necessities, whether it's clothing, diapers, food, now gas. And with the gas, the thing that's really troubling is we call it a rocket and a feather type scenario when it comes to oil. So oil rockets up and then it kind of feathers down. And gas prices are going to do the same thing. And that's why the ceasefire is incredibly important. But more importantly, so is our trust on the national and international stage, that we, America, are going to follow our word. And that's something that this president has had a really hard time doing. And we see whether it's the attacks on NATO, saying he's going to pull out, the world order is dependent upon international trade. And that depends on your word. And this president has broken that word time and time again.
So as that market continues to be disruptive, some folks in the Republican side have floated suspending the gas tax to provide some sort of relief if the price of oil barrels stays very high. Would that work? Would that be helpful?
Well, it's a short-term solution. The problem we have now is that, we have to start transitioning out of fossil fuels so that we don't have this problem. The second thing is when you look at the ceasefire, one of the pieces of it was that there could be a $2 million toll for every ship going through the Straits of Hormuz going forward. That's going to create just an artificial price. It's a tariff, right? It's another tariff. And so, short term, could we remove the gas tax and we create some temporary relief? Yeah, but gas prices didn't move 60 cents. They moved over $1.30, $1.40 in some cases. Out in Palm Springs, it's over $6 a gallon, pretty consistently. Diesel's above $7. So this is not just repealing a 60-cent gas tax. This is a bigger fundamental economic problem where wages haven't kept up with the price of inflation. And now we're starting to see people having to make incredibly hard choices they should never have to make.
Now, so news in this administration moves very quickly. I was in this studio not many days ago with one of your opponents, and there was no ceasefire.
Yeah.
Now there is a ceasefire. So I have to ask you about the state of things today. If the sort of 10 points from the ceasefire agreement became a lasting resolution, for whatever amount of time is reasonable before the president decides to do something else, is that a as good as we were going to get? What would be a better solution? What is the sort of outcome once you concede that the war has started, that you can't
unring that bell.
You can't unring that bell. So what is a comfortable landing place, and is some version of this agreement it?
Well, I think it's still unclear whether Iran is going to keep their nuclear enrichment, and that is a big question mark. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That is a red line. That being said, we don't know exactly if this 10-point, who's agreed to it. I mean, it's pretty clear that we are seeing still attacks in the Gulf states, that we don't know if this is going to hold. It's certainly not a good deal when Iran gets to charge $2 million a ship for every cargo container going through the Straits of Hormuz. This is only going to benefit Russia and China. This is why the War Power Act matters. Congress should have had a vote in this, so we didn't have to have this situation. But this is not the best deal we could get. And this is the problem with Donald Trump, is he wanders into situations that he has no understanding of the complexity of it, and then he doesn't know how to get out, and then he claims victory. And this is a little bit different than what the Bush administration did, but let's not forget that we had George Bush standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier declaring mission accomplished. And we had Donald Rumsfeld saying it ain't going to be 6 days, maybe 6 weeks, but certainly not 6 months that we were going to be in Iraq. This is a continuous problem among Republican administrations when it comes to foreign policy, that there is no plan. And I don't think this is the best deal we could get.
And so it sounds like you're doubtful that this ceasefire actually is an endpoint that we can really point to.
I mean, we're already seeing bombings still continue, so it doesn't seem like the ceasefire is holding. We'll see what happens. One of the scary things about this war was Donald Trump originally said, well, it's not regime change. It doesn't seem like we've gotten regime change. We don't want them to get a bomb. They still have their nuclear enrichment in this, although Hegseth and Vance have said that's not the case, but that's what's in the ceasefire agreement. We've got to get clarity over what's actually happening, which is why Congress should have a vote in it.
So you mentioned what seems to be continued bombings in Lebanon from Israel. Points to sort of a disagreement that I think is playing out in this race among the Democratic side of the primary, which is reflective of some disagreements within the Democratic caucus in general about sort of the party's disposition towards Israel. Where do you land looking forward on where the United States relationship with Israel is, and how that has changed in the last year and a half?
We need to get to a two-state solution. That's got to be the answer, and we've got to bring everyone to the table and make that happen. And so that's what I'm committed to doing. But I'm in this race because as much as we're talking about foreign policy, as much as we're talking about the U.S.-Israel relationship, when you talk to voters, and we've done over 120 listening tour sessions in 5 town halls, those are not the questions I get. The questions go back to, how am I going to afford to pay my rent this week? How am I going to be able to actually make sure that my kid is going to have some kind of childcare while I'm commuting 3 hours to work because I can't find a job that pays a living wage in the town I'm in? Why am I paying $1,900 a month for rent when I'm making $19 an hour? Those are the questions I hear, and that is what my campaign is focused on. And I think if you notice, you mentioned that some of the news coverage, I get my one-liner description. I also don't sling the mud. We're out there campaigning, talking to voters. We're the only campaign up on television with a positive message that's talking about what we're going to do for the economy, including making the first 50,000 tax-free, so that people don't have to make those choices.
Yeah, so let's talk about the first 50,000 tax-free and in a bigger picture, sort of what you can do from Congress to affect those cost of living issues. Some of those things, where do I live that's close to, my kid's school and my job that I can afford? A lot of that's local land use decision making, right? So from Congress, what are the sort of buttons you can press or the levers you can pull to affect, household affordability?
Yeah, the Democratic Party has gotten really good in a bad way of offering hypothetical money. You go buy a house, we'll give you a $25,000 tax credit. You have a kid, we'll give you a $5,000 tax credit. In my plan, what we're doing is we're exempting the first $50,000 from federal income tax, including FICA. So it's effectively over a 7% pay raise for everyone in this country making $50,000 or less. It's over $3,000 back into their paycheck. They can make that decision, for example, if they're paying $1,900 a month for rent, do I want that to go to childcare or do I want it to pay almost a month and a half of my rent? That's a huge help for working families. And that's the key. And it wouldn't raise taxes on anyone making less than $234,000 a year. So this is a massive middle class tax cut. When it comes to things government can do and how we can help, first, let's get cash back in the hands of workers, the people that really need it. The second is let's figure out how really the true wealth is being made in this country, which is not through wages, it's through the equity markets. You mentioned I'm an investor, former asset manager. That's where the money's being made. That's why we need to tax long-term capital gains over $1 million as if it was income. So the revenue's there to pay for programs like Head Start, so we have universal pre-K, so someone doesn't have to make the choice about childcare. Let's expand housing so that way people can have easier access to transit, so they can go work in a city and not have to worry about commuting on the 10 or the 15 or the 215 for just endless hours. Let's think about ways that we can help homeowners stay in their home who maybe need help with homeowners insurance, which has gotten really expensive, so they don't have to move out. That's what I'm running on. That's things Congress can do. Those are federal issues. You write about local land use. That's something the state and local municipalities have to do, but I can tell you I'm a YIMBY because we've got to build more housing.
A quick word. We are trying our best to cut through the noise. If you are still here, you are exactly who we want watching this show. So please, click the subscribe button to help us continue on our journey to give you the very best San Diego politics content.
So you mentioned that there is a sort of tendency in the Democratic Party right now to offer hypothetical money. There is another tendency in the Democratic Party in the last, I don't know, maybe at least 20 years, probably maybe 15 more charitably, of sort of conceding the unpopularity of certain taxes, raising the threshold of what qualifies as the middle class to in chasing popularity, and in doing so, chipping away at the tax base. And so, as a progressive who wants the country to do more, the sort of $50,000, first $50,000 exemption, that sort of tax cut as stimulus, tax cut as sort of an affordability solve. Does it make you wary that it undermines the ability of the government to do the things that you also want to do?
No, because the reason that you make the first $50,000 tax-free is because the person who's having to choose between buying gas or childcare or milk and prescription drugs is not the person who's going to solve the $40 trillion deficit we have. The people who are going to solve the $40 trillion deficit we have are the people who have seen the stock market since 2009 go up 550 times, why federal minimum wage hasn't moved. And that's why I'm saying we're not talking about all capital gains tax. I'm talking about over $1 million in gains that isn't from the sale of your primary home, moving that rate by 17 points to conform with income. So go from 20% to 37%. That's where the money is. I'm talking about eliminating the FICA cap, which currently sits at $184,000, so that way Social Security is solvent going forward. So if you make $1 million a year and you stop paying into Social Security on March 9th every year, you keep paying all the way to December 31. The problem in this country, and the reason we're in the hole we're in, is because we have taxed wages as they haven't kept up with inflation, and we've ignored the growth in the equity market.
So California 48 is one of the most high-profile races in the country. It was designed to be that way.
It was designed to be that way.
And so it's not really an exaggeration to say that if you win, or one of your opponents wins on the Democratic side, most likely the Democrats will be in control of Congress. Maybe there's some like low probability scenario
some
where
weird
you win
thing happening.
Here,
you never know.
But in general, if a Democrat wins this seat, it will mean that Democrats control the House. Specifically in light of the one big beautiful bill that was just passed and is still like new provisions are going into effect. Just last week. For instance, in CalFresh benefits. What should be the first legislative priority for the Democrats as they control the House?
I come back to, I think there's a package here that includes making the first $50,000 tax-free. That is a bipartisan issue. Donald Trump, did incredibly well talking about no tax on tips.
Yeah.
People need relief in this country that are at, really making just ends meet, and we need to make life easier. That would be an incredibly popular thing. I think we could get it signed even by President Trump. The other piece is the homeowners insurance. And this is something for, pieces of San Diego, but County for sure. But certainly in that 215-15 corridor, Temecula, Hemet, French Valley, Homeland that are new to this district, Temecula was in, but those other areas that are new, fire insurance is incredibly critical. It's really hard to get insurance now. Yeah. Rates are going through the roof. This is a problem in the South as well. Yeah. We're seeing it with
East County, San Diego. It's not really part of this district, but it's basically
same thing.
Yeah, you can't get a new house out there right now.
Right, and so this is a bipartisan issue, and I think if the Democratic Party could campaign not necessarily on economic populism, because that's not really what this is. This is about unrigging the economic system we have, so that people can make their life affordable and stay in their homes and help people eventually be able to afford a home. That's where the Democratic Party should go.
Now, are you at all worried about the implication or the sort of downstream effects of that insurance reform sort of goosing home builders to continue to build new homes in fire-prone areas that would undermine their ability to transition to building sort of dense housing along transit corridors in already established areas? You said you're a YIMBY.
Yeah.
Environmental concerns associated with that sort of sprawl. I mean, is the insurance industry's response sort of the market signal that maybe that sort of housing shouldn't be easy to insure?
Well, the nice part about legislating this is obviously going to be a negotiation, and there's ways you can penalize developers who are going into areas we shouldn't build that are going to try to benefit from a public program, right? You don't want a tragedy of the commons situation where we're all paying in and therefore only one small group is getting the benefit. But what I'm talking about is people who have been in their homes since 1970s, 1960s, right up in Idlewild, who are now paying $10,000 a year for fire insurance. You don't want them to have to sell their home when they're going into retirement at a cut rate and then eventually devaluing their largest asset. We don't want that. So this is all things that can be worked out inside of the legislative process. But, grandfathering some homes in, saying new development doesn't qualify or they have to pay a premium to do it. There's ways we can legislate that. It's not a one-size-fits-all program.
Okay, fair enough. Now, as I said, people here in San Diego still getting to know you a bit. I don't know if people are familiar that you ran about 10 years ago now for lieutenant governor in Vermont.
Yeah.
So I saw when you pulled out of that race, what one of the reasons you cited was that you realized it was a mistake to self-fund your campaign.
So that was what was reported. That's actually not what the direct quote was.
Okay.
When I decided, so I grew up, born in California, but grew up in Vermont. I ran for lieutenant governor of Vermont. I actually never put my name on the ballot, so it was an exploratory committee. But I did that because 80% of the state didn't have broadband internet access. And imagine living in a time where 80% of San Diego didn't have broadband internet. How hard that would be to grow an economy. How hard that would be to bring jobs.
Yeah.
How hard that would be to survive. It's part of the reason why I had to leave Vermont was because you couldn't grow a business there.
Yeah.
The self-funding piece, this is incredibly important. I was talking then about the fear of eventually Donald Trump being elected in 2015, 2016, when people didn't really think that was a possibility. Yeah. Everything that I was talking about at the time became true, which was the Democratic Party had missed it on the economy. I'm running now, and people are going to get to know us here in San Diego pretty quick because we're going to be the only campaign up on television next week with our ad running, talking about how to be the only trained economist in Congress. But I'm running now because everything I thought was going to happen, happened.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party has not had really a response to him. The Democratic Party is the reason to blame that Donald Trump was reelected in 2024. We didn't solve the economy when we were given the option in 2020 for working families. And now we are getting another chance. You're seeing these special elections all across the country. We need to step up and deliver for the American people to make sure we never have a Donald Trump again.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you are, more than half the money in your...
Actually, less than half now.
Less than half.
We're less than half now. Yeah, after last quarter, we had a massive quarter, our largest quarter since launch, and I'm now less than half of the money.
Is that counting loans too?
Yeah. No, the loans are the only thing in. Okay. Yeah, so we're less than half.
So now, have you changed your perspective on self-funding campaigns in that case? Because and it's not just Donald Trump, which was the case 10 years ago. Right now, sharing a ballot with you, Tom Steyer is sort of in a similar situation. Do you have a different opinion on whether that's
So once again, I think the self-funding comment was taken by a reporter. There's one article in Vermont about it. That's not actually what the press conference was.
It was aggregated a lot.
Yeah, but I think the same reporter did it a couple times. Yeah. But the point is that this key is that if we don't stop Donald Trump now, there will be no stopping him. And that I am in this race to make sure that people are going to get the money that they need to make their life work. And that at no point has anyone asked me about my sexuality or how, the endorsements, all the things that the political class likes to talk about. Yeah. What we talk about when we meet with voters is how I'm going to make their life better. And I'm the one candidate in this race that's held the town hall. I'm the one candidate in this race that's doing free 120 listening tour sessions across this district. We're the only candidate with an office open. This is, as you said earlier, California 48 is the path to the majority. If we don't win this seat, then Donald Trump is going to get free reign. And I am all in to make sure that someone from this district is going to be the candidate who gets to represent this district. And that is why I'm all in.
All right, well, let that be the last word. Yeah. Brandon Riker, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I'm back with Andy, and it's time for everyone's favorite bit, our monthly local political power rankings, scientifically calculated and very important. I'll start us off. At number 3, Jack McGrory. Jack is a real estate investor who was the city manager of San Diego 30 years ago, back when San Diego had a city manager. In more recent years, Jack has styled himself as a civic champion of San Diego, serving on every board and task force he could find, and helping to lead the effort to get Snapdragon Stadium built in Mission Valley. But now, Jack apparently wants to break San Diego up. He's become the so-called chief negotiator and strategic advisor of the effort to have San Diego's richest neighborhood, La Jolla, secede from the rest of the city. In the middle of an unprecedented budget crisis in San Diego, Jack McGrory wants its wealthiest residents, himself included, to be able to opt out entirely. Some champion of San Diego.
Are these good or bad, the power rankings?
They are neither. They're just things that...
Well, that works well for us because the number 2 is Republican governor candidate Steve Hilton, who had the fortune this week to be endorsed by President Donald Trump, which I have to say is also kind of a victory for you, Matt Strabone, because this greatly increases the chance that there is no Democratic shutout in that race. Republicans have got their signal. They now know who to vote for. If past is any history or is any indication in the MAGA era, Steve Hilton will be going to the November election.
Or perhaps I knew that was going to happen, and really it's the California Democratic Party that should be sending a fruit basket to the president, right? Right.
Yes.
And at number 1 this month, former county supervisor and state assemblyman Nathan Fletcher. Nathan resigned from the County Board of Supervisors almost 3 years ago in the midst of a scandal that saw him engage in make-out sessions with an employee of the San Diego Metropolitan System, where he was serving as the chair. With that episode and the resulting litigation now mostly behind him, Nathan has popped back up with a personal blog on Substack that he has been sharing across all of his social media platforms. He says he's done with politics. He says he's working on a ranch in Arkansas now. Fine. But I know a little something about the psyche of politicians. They are the kind of people who very much want the world to see them and to know them. Now, for the last 3 years, Nathan's been pretty anonymous, but he couldn't stay that way. He needed to be seen again, known again, and that's why he's writing a Substack. And look, a person can have a blog if he wants, but I think it's a sign that he'll be in politics again someday, whether he knows it yet or not. And Nathan, when you do come back, please swing by and announce it on our show. All right. Also receiving votes this month were San Diego City Council member Henry Foster, who is running for re-election, but so far has been outraised by his opponent, and also Serge Dedina again. Anyway, as always, if you'd like to complain about these power rankings, please send an email to andrewk@timesofsandiego.com. Now, we actually ran a poll on our Instagram account, and if you aren't following us on Instagram, it's where we post all of our polls, asking people if they thought Nathan was going to come back, and that was about a 50-50 split. So I think things remain to be seen. Any quick thoughts on that?
I mean, 50-50 is the right in the meat, because you get to choose whatever you want that to mean.
That's right. They are selling dollars for 50 cents, is what you say. All right, I think that's good enough. We'll leave it there. As always, we're greatly appreciative that you came and joined us. And until next time, look after one another and be kind.